laddies and gentlemen, oh, I feel something stirring in this place tonight, because sometimes the story they tell you is not the story that's being told. You hear me? You can read the headline, you can scroll through the feed, but if you don't look beneath the end, if you don't listen between the words, you'll miss the real message. And no, the world looked and saw a moment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi declined an invitation from President Donald J. Trump, and the pundits jumped. The analysts talked, the bloggers blogged. But I came to tell you tonight that what it looks like is not always what it means. Because when a leader says, no, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's reflection. Sometimes it's redirection. And sometimes it's revelation. And tonight we're going to dig past the politics, past the posturing, and past the press releases, and see what this moment is really saying to the world. But so every no in politics carries a hidden ice to something else. A refusal in the public arena is rarely just an isolated act of rejection. It is almost always an affirmation of another value, another alliance, another set of priorities. When a leader declines an invitation, they are not simply turning away from one table. They are choosing to sit at another. That eyes might be to domestic political considerations, to a strategic vision, or to the preservation of a particular image on the global stage. It might be asked to sovereignty, to caution, to timing, or to sending a subtle signal that words alone could never carry. In international politics, optics are as potent as treaties. A single act can ripple across borders, shaping perceptions far beyond the room where it happens. Saying no may appear to close a door, but in reality, it can open corridors of opportunity that are less visible yet more impactful. The choice to decline can be an assertion of independence, a declaration of priorities, or a carefully calculated pause that forces others to reconsider their own positions. History shows that such decisions often have layers, some visible to the public, some hidden in private conversations, and some understood only years later when the strategic picture becomes clear. No can protect relationships just as easily as it can strain them, depending on how it is timed and framed. In this way, leaders wield refusal not as an absence of action, but as a deliberate move on the chessboard of global affairs. Every no is anchored to an IS that matters even more, and the real question is not what was turned down, but what was chosen instead. Declining an invitation is not the end of a conversation, it's the start of a new one. In the high-stakes world of diplomacy and leadership, the act of saying no rarely slams the door shut. Instead, it often shifts the dialogue into a different space, a space where the terms, tone, and timing can be redefined. A refusal, when issued by a leader on the global stage, immediately invites questions. Why now? What does it signal? What comes next? Each of those questions becomes its own thread, waving a deeper narrative that extends far beyond the original request. When a leader turns down an offer, they are not simply walking away from the moment. They are often inviting the other party to recalibrate, to reconsider, to approach with a different proposition or at a different time. This can create a power dynamic where the one who declined holds the leverage, controlling the pace and direction of future engagement. The conversation moves from the public stage into the quieter, more strategic halls of private negotiation, and where agendas can be reshaped without the pressure of cameras or headlines. In many cases, a decline is a test, a way to measure the persistence, flexibility, and sincerity of the other side. Will they come back with a better offer? Will they adjust their expectations? Will they signal a willingness to compromise? The act of saying no can strip away superficial posturing and reveal the true intentions behind an invitation. Far from ending dialogue, it deepens it, forcing both sides to move past pleasantries and confront the real issues at stake. By refusing one path, a leader often opens several others, ensuring that the conversation continues. Not on the terms that were offered, but on the terms they choose to set. Power speaks loudest when it refuses to speak at all. In leadership, silence can be more unsettling, more commanding, and more strategic than any fiery declaration. Words can be challenged, debated, and dismantled, but silence leaves room for speculation, forcing others to fill the void with their own interpretations. When a leader deliberately withholds comment or action, they create an atmosphere in which the absence of response becomes the response. This calculated restraint is often far more potent than immediate engagement because it shifts the burden of interpretation onto the audience, the media, and even other world leaders. In politics, every statement carries weight, but so does the decision not to make one. Refusing to participate in a conversation, whether by declining an invitation, bypassing a summit, or choosing not to answer a provocative remark, can send a sharper signal than direct confrontation. It can communicate disapproval without escalation, caution without weakness, and strategy without unnecessary exposure. This kind of silence forces observers to look beyond the surface, to search for the motivations and long-term objectives that may not yet be visible. The power of not speaking is that it cannot be misquoted, yet it can be endlessly analyzed. It commands attention by creating a gap that others instinctively try to fill, drawing more focus to the one who remains silent. History is filled with moments when restraint preserved relationships, avoided missteps, or created leverage that words would have squandered. In a world driven by constant commentary, the choice to withhold can make a statement that echoes louder and lasts longer than any speech. By refusing to speak, a leader can often say everything they need to say without ever uttering a single word. In diplomacy, the gesture is the message. Long before leaders exchange formal statements or sign agreements, that they communicate volumes through actions, appearances, and symbolic choices. A handshake, a seat at the table, a visit postponed, or an invitation declined can often speak louder than any prepared speech. These gestures operate on a level that bypasses formal language, tapping into centuries of protocol, tradition, and unspoken rules. For those watching closely, a single act can reveal the state of a relationship, the priorities of a nation, and the direction of future policy. And diplomatic gestures are rarely accidental. They are deliberate, calculated, and staged with precision to send signals not only to the other party involved, but to the wider world observing from a distance. When a leader chooses to attend an event, it can signify alignment, respect, and openness. When they choose not to, it can signal caution, disagreement, or a desire to maintain distance. The meaning lies not just in the act itself, but in the timing, the context, and the history that frames it. Every move on the diplomatic stage is layered. An apparently simple action can be designed to reassure allies while warning rivals, to build goodwill in one area while creating leverage in another. The subtlety of these gestures is what makes them so powerful. They can then carry multiple interpretations, allowing leaders to speak to different audiences at the same time without committing to a single explicit position. In this way, the gesture becomes a form of language, a language that rewards those who pay attention and quietly shapes the course of international relations without a word being spoken. What you don't attend often tells the world more than what you do attend. In the realm of leadership and diplomacy, absence can be as deliberate and powerful as presence. Choosing not to be in a certain room, on a certain stage, or at a certain event sends a signal that is closely examined by allies, adversaries, and the public alike. The world takes note not only of where leaders go, but of where they choose not to go, because each absence alters the perceived balance of priorities, loyalties, and strategic interests. Declining to attend can shift the narrative without a single statement being issued. It forces observers to question the reasons behind the decision, to connect the dots between current events, political pressures, and long-term objectives. The empty chair becomes a statement in itself, an embodiment of what is being withheld, whether is approval, endorsement, or legitimacy. In some cases, not showing up preserves neutrality. In others, it draws a clear line of separation. Absence can also be used to protect leverage. By staying away, a leader can avoid being drawn into commitments they are not ready to make, or sidestep confrontations they prefer to handle behind closed doors. It can serve as a form of quiet protest, a way to register discontent without breaking diplomatic norms. Over time, patterns of absence can reveal a leader's true alliances and priorities more clearly than public declarations ever could. In this way, the decision not to attend becomes an intentional act of messaging, one that speaks not through participation, but through the power of staying away.